Hey guys, just a quick note at the top of the video. I have commissions open! Check out the link in the description or send me an email at magicalgirlartist@gmail.com for more info. Okay, on with the show. Bye! Hi everyone, it's Regs again. Several months ago, I made a video about one of my original projects, a series of character designs for magical girls based on the D&D 5e classes. The idea is that the story takes place in a fairly generic high fantasy setting, but with magical girls based around various adventurer archetypes. It's an extremely self-indulgent series because I love magical girls, I love TTRPGs, and I love high fantasy. But what is character design for if not making the most cater-to-you concepts ever? Last time, we covered the various arcane casters, Athakati the elf wizard, Borea the dragonborn sorcerer, and Ashes the tiefling warlock. This time, we'll be talking about the melee combatant classes, fighter, monk, and barbarian. I picked them to go next because I think of melee as kind of the opposite of arcane stuff, and I wanted to look at the contrast between the two groups in terms of design. That's enough preamble. Let's get into it. I love fighters. People sometimes rag on fighters, especially human fighters, because they're plain or boring or whatever. But I fucking love fighters so goddamn much. I've talked before about playing a human fighter for like 3 years and how fun it was, but I also just like fighters because they're a very versatile class. There are all kinds of builds you can make with them, even if I do tend to lean towards your traditional sword and board. Plus, they often have an air of being just some guy, and I think every party needs to have just some guy for grounding purposes. Despite all that, this was the second to last character I made because I was having a hard time finding a proper concept for her. Like I mentioned when talking about the Warlock, the class's versatility makes it difficult to have a soul-defining idea of what a fighter looks like. I knew I wanted her to be wearing armor. It's no secret that I love armored magical girls, it's one of my favorite design choices, and I think it's totally underutilized. However, I already had several characters in armor, and I wanted to make sure all armored classes were wearing different types of armor for visual distinctiveness. The cleric has chainmail, and the paladin has full plate, so what did I give the fighter? Not to mention, I wanted all the classes to have different weapons and fighting styles. My usual fighter go-to of sword and shield was taken, but I still wanted her to have a sword. I wound up choosing scale mail and springboarding off of that to give her a flower theme. I wanted the scales to look a bit like flower petals, and put them in several areas of her outfit. Obviously the top and gauntlets, but I also made her skirt out of longer scale petals and added a few rows of scales to her boots. In lieu of a helmet, I opted to give her a battle tiara, because I love those, and since her hair isn't particularly fancy, I wanted to make sure she had some kind of headpiece. I also gave her a sword like I originally wanted, but I made it a two-handed greatsword. Nothing screams anime like a massive, impractical sword, right? Making her a human was obvious. Again, people make fun of how basic a human fighter is, but I always think it adds a grounding element to a party to have a character who's just a normal human and doesn't have any kind of magic powers. I mean, this is still a magical girl series, so she obviously has some kind of magic going on, but nothing that every other main character doesn't also have. I still haven't decided on a subclass for her. Her fighting style is obviously great weapon fighting so that she can use her greatsword more efficiently, but the subclass is harder. The whole idea with her is that she's a pretty basic character, but the champion subclass is a bit too basic. Part of me wants to make her a cavalier, but 1, that's not in the PHB, 2, it feels weird to do that and not give her a horse, and 3, that's what Marlena was, so I don't want to feel like I'm just making Marlena but with flowers. I don't know, I'm still workshopping that part. I wanted to make her a bit more feminine and delicate. Mostly, I just think it's fun to contrast that with her big fuck-off sword, but also I was trying to see how I could make a character who's both armored and delicate at the same time. That's also why I gave her such big eyes and a flower motif. I think I've managed to pull it off. I've gone back and forth on her colors several times. Originally, her cape was pink with yellow flowers and her leggings were yellow with pink flowers. Unfortunately, her top half just had way too much pink and the cape kind of blended with the rest of it. I wound up making both parts yellow with pink flowers. It's also taken me a while to figure out how to do the flowers in a way that I can shade them properly, and I forget how it works and have to relearn how to do it every time I draw her. Okay, confession time. This pose I'm drawing her in? It's inspired by pictures of former Montreal Canadiens goalie Ken Dryden leaning on his hockey stick to watch the play going on down at the other end of the ice. Yes, that's very dorky. No, I don't care about hockey. Her name is Hana Haruno, and she's named after a Precure character because, of course, she is. Hana is just straight up the Japanese word for flower, and as far as I can tell, it's a normal name in Japan. Haruno, on the other hand, is a name I 100% stole from Haruka Haruno, aka Cure Flora from Go Princess Pretty Cure. Flora is a flower-themed character with a pink and yellow color scheme, so I figured it was appropriate. I'll be honest, I'm not totally sure whether Haruno is Hana's actual family name or if it's one that she chooses for herself. It could go either way. Hana's deal is that she's the third daughter of a minor noble family whose only real responsibility in life is to marry well. However, despite being in her early 20s, she hasn't achieved that yet and is regarded as something of the family disappointment. She has no martial experience or training and basically becomes the legendary fighter as a fluke. Hana has big Elle Woods energy and largely wanders through life with a sense of wide-eyed wonder. She's very friendly and sweet, but also dumb as a bunch of rocks, naive, and easily tricked. Herbo Queen. There's definitely some trauma there from how her family has treated her as disposable her whole life, but she doesn't recognize it as trauma. She's eager to please and immediately goes into fawn mode when people are mean to her. Despite all this, she's fairly observant when it comes to other people, and she has a great memory for conversations she's had with others. She goes out of her way to be polite and formal with everyone, which can be off-putting since she's definitely still a noble. I'm still not sure about what kind of medium I'd like to make this story with. I've flip-flopped between a few different ideas several times. A webcomic, a dating sim with RPG elements, or an RPG with dating sim elements. It makes it kind of difficult to get the project off the ground, since all three of those ideas require vastly different types of preparation. In any case, though, Hana would be the protagonist. As I've said before, human fighters make for great just-some guys, and even though she's got a noble background instead of something more boring, I think Hana can work well for that. that's all for Hana. Monks are a fun class, but I haven't actually played them that much. I played one in a Pathfinder one-shot last Christmas, and I played one based on Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z a few years ago, but that's really it. I like them well enough, I just don't tend to play them. They're an interesting melee class because, unlike the other two classes in this video, they can't really tank. Fighters usually have a high AC, and barbarians have a ridiculous amount of HP. Monks don't tend to have either of those, but as far as I can tell, I think they're more meant to be a DPS class. Again, I haven't really played monks much because my preferred RPG rules are tank and healer, but that's my grasp of the situation. I decided to make this monk an elf. I know we just had an elf in the last video, but I wanted to stick to races from the PHB, so I had to double up on some of them. I tried to pick the more common ones for doubling, partly for realism, but mostly so I wouldn't have to draw too many Dragonborn. So that means we got doubles of human, elf, dwarf, and gnome. This character was actually made before the fighter, but only just. She was the 10th of 12 characters created. I had a tough time with her design. Her outfit definitely had to be inspired by a martial arts uniform, but I wasn't really sure what else to do with it. Like, I had no idea what the hell to do with her hair or shoes. In the end, I decided to give her a short undercut and no shoes at all. I stand by those choices, but it does make drawing her a pain in the ass because I hate drawing feet. She has one of the simplest designs of all the characters. I kept debating adding more details, but I think simplicity works for her. For a weapon, I obviously had to go with a bow staff. It's pretty much the iconic monk weapon, at least to me. The problem is that a basic bow staff doesn't really look like a magical girl item, and it's tough to fancy one up. I wound up giving it the same green bandages that the monk has around her hands, feet, and chest, as well as carvings of dragons wrapping around it. My idea was that the dragons are actually alive and characters in their own right. I kind of remember that being a gag in the Percy Jackson books, where the snakes on Hermes Caduceus were alive and could talk. In this case, the only one who can hear the dragons, at least while they're in the staff, is the monk herself. Speaking of the dragons, just like the fighter, I've had a tough time deciding on a subclass for the monk. I've already said several times that I want to stick to the PHB, and if I do that, then the obvious choice is Way of the Open Hand. The other two PHB subclasses don't work for her at all. I'm not making a ninja or the Avatar. If I were to look outside the PHB though, I think Way of the Astral Self could be actually, hang on, post-cancelled, I just found out Way of the Ascended Dragon exists. This is not a bit, I legitimately just found out about this subclass while writing this section. Holy shit, I am so out of the loop. Did you guys know about this? Holy shit. Anyway, still deciding, but damn if Ascendant Dragon isn't a top fucking contender now. I picked the name Lee, short in this case for Lee Sharani. No real linguistic significance there, I just kept adding syllables until it sounded elfy enough. Her nickname Lee, though, is a reference to Bruce Lee, even if it's spelled differently. Lee is also the first character I've talked about for this series who uses more than just she/her pronouns. They're genderqueer and mostly use she/they pronouns, but they also won't correct you if you call them he. As far as they're concerned, gender is for people who aren't going to live hundreds of years. Lee is relatively young for an elf, younger than Athakati even. She only just became an adult at 100 years old. When Lee was a baby, their parents died from a plague and they were taken in by a temple of monks just out of town. She was trained in martial arts when she was old enough and is now one of the most skilled people at the temple. Because elves live so long and age so slowly, Lee watched people younger than her join the temple, live full lives, and die of old age before she was even finished puberty. This really fucked them up, and a good chunk of their character arc is coming to terms with being functionally immortal and being friends with people who aren't. Athakati helps them through some of it. Fairly detached and aloof. Because of her issues with death, she tends to keep her distance emotionally. That's not to say she's unfriendly or standoffish. They're actually one of the friendliest members of the team. They just don't tend to let people in very easily. They treat people well enough, though, and will hang out and laugh and talk with just about anyone. She's pretty insightful, too. It doesn't take long for her to figure other people out, whether that's during a match or in a conversation. That makes it all the more fun when that gets turned around on her and Hana reads her for filth. Their general demeanor has been awake so long they've achieved enlightenment. They look and are super tired basically all the time. They're also super chill though. Like monks, I haven't played many barbarians. I had a Triton barbarian named Sharkbait for a while, but I think that's the only one I've ever played. I know I've talked about how much I like tanks, but barbarians are face tanks, meaning that they can tank a lot of damage because they have a lot of HP. For me, I'd rather play a tank with high AC than high HP. That's 100% a me thing, but the fact remains I don't have much experience with barbarians as a player. I've been in a lot of parties with barbarians, though. I don't remember why I made the barbarian a dwarf. I remember I wanted to have two dwarves, and one of them was going to be the cleric, but I don't remember why I picked barbarian for the other one. I guess it doesn't really matter. She was the last character I designed. I really left all the martial classes right to the very end, huh? If I had a tough time with the monk's design, I had a ridiculously difficult time with the barbarian. At least with Lee, I had a vague idea of what I was basing their outfit on. For the barbarian, I wanted her to have ripped clothes, and that was all I could think of. She's the first character for this series that I've done some major changes to. Most of the design is still the same. As you can see in the original design, though, she had layered skirts and fur trim on her boots. I wanted to change that. I felt like some of it was too close to the druid's design, since she also has a fur and animal motif going. What I wound up drawing inspiration from was Precure because, of course, it was. Specifically, her new boots are inspired by the clunky shoes and leg warmers that I love so much from the early seasons. For the skirt, I decided to make it so she had a fur wrap over top of a torn-up dress, and I like that way better. The hardest part of this whole thing was the fur, especially coloring it. I wanted to make sure it looked different from the other materials in her outfit. Going forward, I think I'd keep anything furry with little short lines on the line art, and anything ripped or jagged with the longer lines. I started to do that, but I didn't wind up doing that on the whole outfit because quite frankly, I got sick of looking at it. I'm really happy with how the coloring came out though. I think I managed to give it a pretty good texture. To me, no weapon says Barbarian like a big fuck-off axe. I know that just like Fighter, Barbarians can use a huge variety of weapons, but a huge double-headed axe just feels right. Like Lee's bow staff, it doesn't really look like a magical girl item, but I mind that a bit less here. I think a huge axe with a big flouncy bow on it or something would just look kind of silly with this character, which isn't really what I'm going for. I knew from jump what subclass I wanted to go with for this character. Path of the Totem Warrior is always a classic, plus it gives her a built-in animal motif for me to base her around. As you can probably guess from the bear icons all over her outfit, I went with a bear totem for her. The little ears on her hood were one of the first ideas I had for her outfit because of it. Originally, I wanted it to be like one of those hats with the super long dangly bits that you can stick your hands in with claws on the end. I decided to make it a cape instead because that felt a little childish. I named her Scalar. I don't think this one had any real meaning to it. I think it might have come from fantasynamegenerators.com, honestly. As far as I know, it's not a real name. Honestly, I don't remember why I named her this, but that's what her name is now. Scalar is middle-aged, around the dwarf equivalent of her mid-40s, probably about 75 or so. I wanted to have someone a little older, and although she wasn't originally planned for that, I decided to change that as I figured out her backstory. She's a mother of 3, but all her kids have grown up, and now she's a hunter for her small community. When she gets the call to adventure, she practically throws herself at it. It's not that she doesn't like being a hunter or living with her family. It's more that she relishes a challenge, and also she's experiencing some extreme empty nester syndrome and really needs to get out and do some more stuff before she drives herself and her kids insane. Personality-wise, Scalar is impulsive and driven by her love of tough challenges. Her hair has a flourish resembling Son Goku's for a reason. She's the walking embodiment of that "our battle will be legendary" meme from Kung Fu Panda, and sometimes her willingness to dive headfirst into things can be frustrating for those around her who have to pick up the pieces. Despite that, she's a good mom at heart. She gives great advice, even if she rarely follows it, she gives great hugs, and she's always ready to lend a helping hand with whatever you need. I'm not gonna lie, somewhere along the way I started thinking of Scalar as the hot one. I'm not sure when this started or even why it started, but here we are. Not that I'm complaining, we stan buff MILFs on this channel. That's it for Scalar. here's all 3 of our melee combatants together. What do you think? I had a good time drawing all of them, but I think Lee's picture is my favorite, mostly just for the pose. Tell me which one you like best. I have 2 more groups of heroes to do for this series. Next up, we have the Divine Casters or the Specialty Classes. Let me know in the comments which one you'd rather see next. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye!